The office door locked with a sound that made Caleb's chest tighten. Serafina Locke stood 3 feet away, her hand still on the handle. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her, San Francisco Bay glittered under afternoon light, distant, cold, untouchable. The kind of view people paid millions to wake up to. Caleb had driven past buildings like this his whole life and never imagined standing inside one. Her perfume reached him first. Something expensive that smelled like money and decisions he couldn't afford to make. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than his rent. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked like armor. She crossed the space between them. Her heels made no sound on the marble floor. When she leaned close, Caleb felt his pulse in his throat. "I'm pregnant." The words came out barely louder than breath. Like a confession. Like a threat. Caleb's hands went numb. Not the overdue electric bill sitting on his kitchen counter. Not the eviction notice he'd shoved under his mattress so Noah wouldn't see it. Not even the empty fridge or the holes in his work boots. Just one thought, sharp as broken glass. Noah. His 6-year-old son. The boy who still asked why his mama didn't want them. The boy who deserved better than a father who was drowning. "Hey. I'm really glad you're here. Be honest, have you eaten today? What did you have? Tell me that, your location, and the time. And if you're new, help me prove something wrong. My mother said drill stories would never reach 10,000 subscribers, but stories like this deserve to be heard. So don't leave without subscribing. It feels empty when you come in and leave without saying a word. Now, let's continue." Caleb blinked. His throat felt like sandpaper. "You're, what?" Serafina stepped back. She moved to the window, arms crossed, staring out at the water like it might give her answers. The light hit her profile and for half a second she looked human. Scared, even. Then her shoulders straightened. Pregnant. 8 weeks. Caleb tried to do the math. 8 weeks back was the rain. The night his rideshare route got rerouted after that freeway closure in San Jose. The charity event that ran late. The woman in the expensive dress who needed a ride when her driver canceled. 1 hour in traffic. Rain hammering the windshield so hard they could barely see the road. Conversation that felt like confession. 2 strangers pretending they weren't broken. 1 night. No names. No promises. No consequences. Or so he'd thought. "You sure it's yours?" Serafina turned. Her eyes were the kind of gray that didn't forgive mistakes. "Yes." The room felt smaller. The air thicker. Caleb worked 2 jobs just to keep Noah fed. Mornings at the shipping yard loading freight until his back screamed. Evenings driving strangers across the bay until his eyes blurred from exhaustion. He lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in Oakland where the hallway light flickered like a dying heartbeat and the walls were thin enough to hear his neighbors' arguments. Another child meant another mouth. Another life depending on a man who was already failing. "I can't," his voice cracked. "I don't have." "I know." Serafina's tone was flat. Not cruel. Just factual. Like she'd already run the numbers and found them wanting. "I looked you up." Of course she did. Caleb felt his face go hot. She knew about the missed rent. The repossessed car 2 years ago. The credit score that made landlords laugh. The fact that Noah's shoes had duct tape holding the soles together. She knew he was nothing. "Then why tell me?" The words came out harder than he meant them to. "Why not just handle it? You got enough money to make problems disappear." Serafina flinched. It was small. Quick. But Caleb caught it. "Because I don't know what to do." Her voice dropped. For the first time since he'd walked into this office, she sounded lost. "I built a company worth $3 billion. I have board meetings in New York next week. Investors in Seattle waiting on my decision about a merger. And I'm standing here telling a man I barely know that I'm carrying his child. The way she said child made Caleb's stomach twist. Not fetus. Not situation. Child. He thought about Noah. The way his son's hand felt in his when they crossed the street. The way Noah still crawled into bed with him during thunderstorms. The way his boy laughed when Caleb did the silly voices during bedtime stories. A child wasn't a problem to solve. A child was a person. What do you want from me? Caleb asked. Serafina opened her mouth to answer. A knock rattled the door. They both froze. Ms. Locke. A man's voice. Clipped. Professional. Mr. Holbrook needs to speak with you. He says it's urgent. Serafina's face went pale. Caleb watched her jaw tighten. She crossed to her desk, pressed a button on the intercom. Her hand shook. Tell Victor I'm in a meeting. He said he'd wait. The silence that followed felt like falling. Serafina released the button. She looked at Caleb, and for the first time he saw something that terrified him more than her money or her power. Fear. You need to leave, she whispered. Now. What? Now. She moved to the door, unlocked it, opened it just wide enough for him to slip through. Her fingers brushed his arm and the touch burned. Caleb stepped into the hallway. The door closed behind him with a soft click. He stood there, heart pounding, trying to understand what just happened. Down the hall, a man in a suit leaned against the wall. Tall. Silver hair. Smile that didn't reach his eyes. Victor Holbrook. The man watched Caleb like a hawk watches a mouse. Then he pushed off the wall and walked toward Serafina's office. Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from the daycare. Noah's running a fever. Can you pick him up early? He turned toward the elevator, legs shaking. Behind him, he heard Victor knock. Heard Serafina's office door open. Heard Victor say, "We need to talk about your visitor." The elevator doors closed. And Caleb realized with cold certainty. Someone had been listening. Noah's forehead burned against Caleb's palm. The boy lay curled on the daycare's vinyl couch, shivering under a donated blanket that smelled like bleach and other people's children. His backpack sat on the floor beside him, the one with the superhero patch Caleb had ironed on to cover the hole. Inside was a lunch Noah hadn't touched. Half a peanut butter sandwich on white bread. An apple with a bruise Caleb had tried to cut away. Daddy? Noah's voice came out small. Fragile. I'm here, buddy. Caleb brushed the boy's hair back. It needed cutting. That was another thing on the list Caleb couldn't afford. Mrs. Washington, the daycare director, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. She was a broad woman with kind eyes that had seen too many struggling parents. She handed Caleb a bottle of children's Tylenol. Last one I got, she said. He'll need to stay home tomorrow if that fever don't break. Caleb's chest tightened. Missing work meant missing money. Missing money meant. He didn't finish the thought. Thank you. He took the bottle. His hands were still shaking from that office. From Serafina's whisper. From Victor's eyes in the hallway. Mrs. Washington lowered her voice. Caleb, you still owe for last week. Heat crawled up his neck. I know. I get paid Friday. I'll bring it then. She nodded, but her face said what her mouth didn't. That's what you said last time. Noah coughed. The sound rattled in his small chest like pennies in a jar. Caleb lifted his son into his arms. The boy weighed almost nothing. When had he gotten so light? The walk to the bus stop took 15 minutes. Noah's breath was hot against Caleb's shoulder. The afternoon sun beat down on them and Caleb's work shirt stuck to his back. He smelled like sweat and diesel fuel and failure. The bus was late. It always was. When it finally came, Caleb paid with exact change, the last bills in his wallet, and found a seat near the back. Noah curled against him, eyes closed, little fingers gripping Caleb's shirt like it was the only solid thing in the world. A woman across the aisle smiled at them. The kind of smile that said single dad and trying his best and poor thing. Caleb looked away. Through the grimy window, San Francisco blurred past. Coffee shops where a latte cost more than Noah's lunch. Boutiques with mannequins wearing clothes that probably cost more than Caleb made in a month. People on sidewalks talking into phones that weren't held together with a cracked screen and prayer. Caleb thought about Serafina's office. That view. That silence. That fear in her eyes when Victor knocked. "We need to talk about your visitor." Someone had been watching. Someone knew. The bus jerked to a stop. Caleb stood, adjusting Noah in his arms, and stepped onto the Oakland street where he'd lived for 3 years. The apartment building looked like what it was, cheap, temporary, forgotten. The paint peeled. The stairs creaked. Someone had spray-painted something on the wall that the landlord never bothered to cover. Apartment 2B. Home. Caleb unlocked the door with one hand, Noah still heavy in his other arm. Inside, the air was stale. Hot. The window AC unit had died 2 weeks ago and Caleb couldn't afford to replace it. He laid Noah on the warm couch, the only real furniture they had besides the mattress in the bedroom, and went to the kitchen. The fridge hummed, barely cold. Inside, ketchup packets from fast food places, half a gallon of milk that expired yesterday, eggs, a block of cheese with mold he'd have to cut off. Caleb pulled out the eggs. Scrambled was easy. Scrambled was cheap. While they cooked, he gave Noah the Tylenol with water from the tap. The boy swallowed it without complaint. He never complained. Not about the small apartment or the second-hand clothes or the fact that his birthday last month had been a cupcake from the dollar store with a candle Caleb had used 3 times already. Noah just loved him. Simple as that. Pure as that. It broke Caleb's heart every single day. They ate on the couch because the table was covered in bills Caleb had been avoiding. Overdue notices. Final warnings. Envelopes he was too afraid to open. Noah picked at his eggs. "Dad?" "Yeah, bud." "Why don't I got a mom?" The question landed like a fist. Caleb set his fork down. He'd answered this before. Noah asked every few months, like he was testing to see if the answer changed. If maybe this time Caleb would say something different. "Your mom, she wasn't ready to be a mom. That's all." "Was it because of me?" "No." Caleb pulled Noah close. The boy's skin was still too warm. "It was never because of you. You hear me? Never." Noah nodded against his chest but Caleb could feel the doubt there. Kids knew when you were lying. Even when the lie was kind. The truth was uglier. Noah's mother, Kendra, had left when Noah was 6 months old. She'd been 19. Caleb had been 28. They'd been together 3 months when she got pregnant. 3 months of pretending they were something more than 2 lonely people scared of being alone. She'd left a note on the bathroom sink. 4 words. "I can't do this." No forwarding address. No phone number. No goodbye. Caleb had tried to find her. For a while. Then he stopped. Because what was he supposed to do if he did? Drag her back. Force her to love a child she didn't want. So he'd learned. How to change diapers. How to mix formula. How to stay awake through the night when Noah cried and nothing helped. How to be both parents when you barely knew how to be one. He'd learned how to endure. After dinner, Caleb ran a lukewarm bath. Hot water was expensive. He washed Noah gently, careful around the boy's ears. Got him into clean pajamas, hand-me-downs from a coworker's kid, 2 sizes too big. Then came the bedtime story. Tonight it was a library book about a dragon who was afraid of heights. Caleb did the voices. Made Noah laugh even though the boy's eyes were glassy with fever. When Noah finally fell asleep, Caleb sat on the edge of the mattress and just watched him breathe. In. Out. In. Out. So small. So fragile. So his. Caleb's phone buzzed. Unknown number. His stomach dropped. He stepped into the living room and answered. Mr. Rowe. A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. Yeah. This is Linda Chen from Child Protective Services. I'm calling to inform you that we've received a complaint regarding the welfare of your son, Noah Rowe. We'll need to schedule a home visit within the next 48 hours. The room tilted. What? A complaint? From who? I'm not at liberty to disclose that information. We take all reports seriously. Someone will be in contact tomorrow to arrange the visit. Please make sure you're available. Wait, this is a mistake. My son is fine. I take care of him. We'll discuss everything during the visit, Mr. Rowe. Have a good evening. The line went dead. Caleb stood there, phone pressed to his ear, listening to silence. His hands shook. A complaint. Someone had called CPS. Someone had reported him. He thought about the office. About Victor in the hallway. About the way that man had looked at him like he was a problem that needed solving. Caleb crossed to the window. Looked out at the dark street below. A black car sat parked 3 spaces down. Engine off. Windows tinted. Someone was inside. Watching. Serafina's penthouse was silent except for the sound of waves against rocks 300 feet below. She stood at the window with a glass of water she hadn't touched, watching the lights of the Golden Gate Bridge cut through the fog. The view from her living room was worth $7 million. People paid for this kind of silence. This kind of distance from the world. Tonight it felt like a prison. Her phone sat on the marble counter behind her. 11 missed calls. 6 from her mother. 3 from her head of PR. 2 from board members who smelled blood in the water. She hadn't answered any of them. The pregnancy test sat in her bathroom trash can. 3 of them, actually. All positive. She'd taken them over the span of 2 weeks, each time hoping the previous ones had been wrong. That her body was lying. That she could go back to the version of her life where everything made sense. But biology didn't care about billionaires. Serafina pressed her palm against the glass. It was cool. Solid. Real. 8 weeks. She'd done the math 100 times. Checked her calendar. Counted backward from the night her driver had cancelled and she'd ended up in a stranger's car during a rainstorm in San Jose. Caleb Rowe. She remembered his hands on the steering wheel. The way he'd talked about his son like the boy was the only thing in the world that mattered. The way he'd laughed when she'd made a joke about corporate charity events being performances for rich people who wanted to feel good about themselves. He'd been real in a way no one in her world was real. And she'd let herself pretend, just for one night, that she could be real too. Now she was pregnant with his child and Victor Holbrook knew. Serafina turned from the window. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened glass, tall, composed, alone. She looked like her mother. Same sharp cheekbones. Same ice-gray eyes. Same expression that said I don't need anyone. Her mother had raised her to believe love was a weakness. Something soft women used to excuse their failures. Eleanor Locke had built her own fortune in pharmaceuticals and raised her daughter the same way she built her companies, through ruthless efficiency and zero tolerance for emotion. When Serafina's father left, Eleanor hadn't cried. She'd simply removed every photo of him from the house and told 8-year-old Serafina that men were liabilities. That depending on anyone but yourself was how you lost everything. Serafina had believed her. She'd built Lock Dynamics from nothing. Started in a studio apartment in Palo Alto with code she'd written herself and a business plan investors had called ambitious. Now she employed 3,000 people across 4 states. Her software ran logistics for half the shipping companies on the West Coast. Forbes had put her on their cover last year with the headline, "The Woman Who Doesn't Sleep." She'd proven her mother right about everything. Until now. Serafina walked to the kitchen. Opened the fridge. Organic vegetables she'd never cook. Sparkling water. Meal prep containers her personal chef delivered twice a week. Everything perfectly portioned. Controlled. She closed the fridge without taking anything. Her stomach turned. Morning sickness that came at night. The doctor had said it was normal. That her body was adjusting. That she should rest more, stress less, eat small meals throughout the day. As if any of that was possible. The merger with a Seattle tech firm was supposed to close next month. Shareholders were counting on it. Employees' bonuses depended on it. If word got out that she was pregnant, unmarried, father unknown, CEO distracted, the stock would tank. Investors would panic. Competitors would circle. Victor had already made that clear this afternoon. After Caleb left, Victor had walked into her office like he owned it. Closed the door. Sat in the chair across from her desk without being invited. Who was that? He'd asked. A driver. I'm handling a personal matter. Victor had smiled. The kind of smile that didn't touch his eyes. A driver named Caleb Rowe. Age 34. Lives in Oakland. Works at Patterson Shipping Yard and drives for a rideshare company. Single father. Credit score in the low 500s. Eviction notice pending. Serafina's blood had gone cold. You ran a background check. I run background checks on everyone who enters this building unannounced. It's my job to protect you. He'd leaned forward. So I'll ask again. What's he doing here? She could have lied. Should have lied. But Victor's eyes had already told her the truth. He knew. Somehow, he knew. It's personal, she'd said again. Nothing is personal when you're worth $3 billion. Victor had stood. Adjusted his cufflinks. If this becomes a problem, I'll handle it. Quietly. Efficiently. You won't have to worry about anything. The way he'd said handle it had made her skin crawl. Serafina shook the memory away. Crossed to her home office. Sat at the desk where she'd negotiated deals that changed industries. Where she'd made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Now she had to make one that would affect 2. Keep the baby or don't. Tell Caleb or don't. Let Victor handle it or stop him. Her hand moved to her stomach. Flat still. No sign of the life growing inside. She thought about her mother's voice. Love is what weak women use to excuse failure. She thought about Caleb's face in her office today. The way he'd gone pale when she told him. The way his first thought hadn't been about money or scandal or himself. Noah. That's what he'd said. Just his son's name. Like that one word contained everything that mattered. Serafina had never wanted children. Had never seen them as anything but obstacles to the life she'd built. You couldn't run a company and raise a child. You had to choose. Her mother had chosen. Serafina had always assumed she'd do the same. But sitting here now, hand on her stomach, she realized something that terrified her more than any boardroom or merger or stock price. She didn't know what she wanted. For the first time in her life, Serafina Locke, the woman who'd built an empire on certainty, had no idea what to do. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. We need to talk. Tomorrow. 8 a.m. My office. She stared at the message. Then she opened her laptop. Typed Caleb's name into the search bar. His social media was sparse. A few photos of his son. A post from 2 years ago about losing his car. Another from last year thanking strangers who donated winter coats. Nothing polished. Nothing performed. Just a man trying to survive. Serafina closed the laptop. She walked back to the window. Looked out at the city below. Millions of people living their lives. Struggling. Loving. Failing. Trying again. Down there somewhere, Caleb was putting his son to bed. Probably in an apartment she couldn't imagine living in. Probably wondering what she was going to do. Probably terrified. She should call him. Explain. Offer something. Money, maybe. Support. A plan. But what plan? What did you say to a man whose life you were about to destroy just by existing in it? Serafina picked up her phone. Her mother's name sat at the top of the missed calls. She could call Eleanor. Ask for advice. Her mother had built a fortune alone. Had raised a daughter alone. Surely she'd know what to do. But Serafina already knew what her mother would say. Get rid of it. Protect the company. Don't be weak. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then her phone rang. Victor's name flashed across the display. She answered. We have a problem, Victor said without preamble. Your driver has a CPS visit scheduled for tomorrow. Anonymous complaint about the child's welfare. Serafina's stomach dropped. You didn't. I protected you. That's what you pay me for. I didn't ask you to. You didn't have to. His voice was smooth. Calm. Reasonable. If this man becomes a liability, the entire company suffers. I'm simply being proactive. Call it off. It's already done. But don't worry. If he's the father you claim he is, he'll be fine. And if he's not? Victor paused. Well. Then you'll know what kind of man you're dealing with. The line went dead. Serafina stood there, phone pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. Outside, fog rolled in from the ocean. Inside, something cracked. When does protecting yourself become destroying someone else? Drop your thoughts below. If you're feeling this story, subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what comes next will change everything. And if you've ever had to choose between what's right and what's safe, share your story in the comments. Someone here needs to hear it. Now let's see what happens when the walls start closing in. The rain hit hard enough to blur the streetlights. Caleb sat in his car, a 15-year-old Honda that burned oil and made a sound like it was dying every time he started it, watching water sheet down the windshield. The charity event had run 2 hours late. His shift should have ended at 10. Now it was past midnight and the freeway was closed because of flooding on the 101. Dispatch had rerouted him through San Jose. One more pickup. Then he could go home. His phone buzzed with the passenger's location. Some hotel downtown. 5 stars. The kind of place where the lobby probably had a chandelier and the doorman wore white gloves. Caleb pulled up to the entrance. A woman stood under the awning in a black dress that looked like it cost more than his car. She was on her phone, pacing, one hand pressed to her temple like she had a headache that money couldn't fix. He rolled down the window. Serafina. She looked up. Even from 10 feet away, he could see she'd been crying. Not the messy kind of crying. The kind where you fought it so hard your eyes just went red and your mascara held on through sheer willpower. She ended the call. Walked to the car. Got in the back seat without a word. Caleb pulled away from the curb. Checked the rearview mirror. Where to? Just drive. I need an address, ma'am. She met his eyes in the mirror. Hers were gray. Sharp. Exhausted. Please. Just, drive. I'll pay whatever the fare is. So he drove. The rain pounded the roof like fists. Traffic was a nightmare. Cars crawled through intersections. Brake lights reflected off wet pavement like scattered rubies. The radio played something low and instrumental that filled the silence without demanding attention. After 10 minutes, she spoke. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Caleb glanced in the mirror again. She was staring out the window, her reflection ghosted against the glass. Sometimes, he said. I gave a speech tonight. Raised $2 million for childhood literacy programs. Everyone clapped. Told me I was inspiring. Her voice was flat. Empty. And all I could think about was how none of them actually care. They're just there to be seen caring. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He'd never been to a charity event. Never worn a suit that fit right. Never had $2 million to give away or the kind of life where people clapped for you. You do good work though, right? He offered. The money still helps kids. Even if the people giving it are doing it for the wrong reasons. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was soft. Sad. Real. You're right. That shouldn't make me feel better, but it does. Traffic stopped completely. Some accident up ahead. Red and blue lights flashed through the rain. They sat there. Engine idling. Wipers beating back and forth. What do you do? She asked. Besides this. I load freight. Early mornings at a shipping yard in Oakland. That why your hands look like that? Caleb glanced down. His knuckles were scarred. His palms were rough. Working hands. Poor hands. Yeah, he said. That and trying to fix everything that breaks in my apartment because I can't afford to call someone who knows what they're doing. She smiled. He caught it in the mirror. You have family. Someone waiting up for you. My son. He's 6. Staying with a neighbor tonight. What's his name? Noah. Something shifted in her expression. Softened. That's a good name. He's a good kid. Caleb felt his chest tighten the way it always did when he talked about Noah. Pride and fear mixed together. Best thing I ever did. Only thing I didn't mess up. I'm sure that's not true. You don't know me. No, she said quietly. I don't. Traffic started moving again. Caleb drove. Took surface streets when the freeway stayed jammed. The rain eased up. Became a drizzle. Then mist. She gave him an address in Pacific Heights. A neighborhood where houses cost $10 million and you needed a gate code just to drive down the street. When they pulled up to her building, she didn't get out right away. Can I ask you something? Her voice was barely louder than the rain. Sure. Do you ever wish you could just disappear? Start over somewhere no one knows you. Caleb thought about the eviction notice. The overdue bills. The way people looked at him when he paid for groceries with food stamps. The shame that followed him everywhere like a shadow. Every day, he said. But I got a kid. So I can't. She nodded like she understood something she hadn't before. Then she opened the door. Stepped out into the mist. Leaned down to look at him through the window. Thank you. For the ride. And for being honest. That's all I got, ma'am. She smiled. Sad and beautiful and completely unreachable. Serafina. My name's Serafina. Caleb. She straightened. Walked toward her building. Disappeared through glass doors that probably had her name on the deed. Caleb sat there for a moment. Then he put the car in drive and headed home. He thought about her the whole way. About the way she'd looked at him in the mirror. About the question she'd asked. About the loneliness in her voice that sounded exactly like his own. When he got to his neighborhood, loud and broken and nothing like Pacific Heights, he parked on the street because his building didn't have a lot. Walked up the stairs. Let himself into the apartment where Noah was asleep on the couch and Mrs. Patterson from next door was dozing in the chair. He paid her $20. All he could spare. She took it without complaint and shuffled back to her own place. Caleb carried Noah to bed. Tucked him in. Watched him breathe. Then he lay down on his own mattress, no frame, just box spring on the floor, and stared at the ceiling. He thought about Seraphina's question. Do you ever wish you could just disappear? He did. But not tonight. Tonight he'd talked to someone who'd actually listened. Who'd seen him as more than just a driver or a poor man or someone to pity. He didn't know her last name. Didn't know what she did or why she'd been crying or if he'd ever see her again. But for 1 hour in a car that smelled like old coffee and rain, Caleb had felt like a person. Not a failure. Not a burden. Just a person. He fell asleep thinking about gray eyes and a sad smile and the way she'd said his name. Like it mattered. 3 weeks later, he'd gotten the call. The corporate summons. A briefcase he'd found in his car after that night, returned to Lock Dynamics because he was honest even when being honest was stupid. 3 weeks later, he'd stood in that office. And she'd whispered 2 words that shattered everything. I'm pregnant. Now, lying in the dark with CPS scheduled to visit tomorrow and a black car watching his building and his son running a fever in the next room, Caleb understood something he hadn't that night. Some people didn't get to disappear. Some people didn't get to start over. Some people just had to survive whatever came next. Even when what came next was impossible. Have you ever had one moment, one night, change your entire life? Tell me about it in the comments. And if this story has you hooked, don't leave without subscribing and turning on notifications. What happens when that CPS visit goes down will break your heart. Share this with someone who needs to hear that even in the hardest moments, you're not alone. Let's keep going. Victor Holbrook poured himself scotch at 9 in the morning and didn't care who noticed. His office sat on the 42nd floor of Lock Dynamics headquarters, 3 floors below Seraphina's, with a view that looked east toward the Bay Bridge. The furniture was leather and chrome. The art on the walls was abstract and expensive. Everything about the space said power without having to speak it out loud. Victor had built his career on reading people. On knowing what they wanted before they did. On understanding that everyone, no matter how rich or powerful, had a pressure point. A weakness. A fear they'd do anything to protect. Seraphina Locke was no different. He'd worked for her for 7 years. Watched her build Lock Dynamics from a promising startup into a tech empire. Negotiated contracts that made competitors weep. Handled lawsuits, hostile board members, investors who thought a woman in her 30s couldn't possibly know what she was doing. He'd made her untouchable. And she'd paid him well for it. But now she was making decisions based on emotion. Feeling things. And feelings were how empires collapsed. Victor took a sip of scotch. Opened the file on his desk. Caleb Rowe. 34 years old. High school diploma. No college. Worked 2 jobs and still couldn't make rent. Credit score that screamed irresponsible. A child born to a woman who'd abandoned them both. The kind of man who solved problems by working harder instead of working smarter. The kind of man who'd never belong in Seraphina's world. Victor had seen this story before. Some poor fool thought he could reach above his station. Thought proximity to power meant access to it. Thought one night with a billionaire meant something more than what it was, a transaction. A moment. Nothing permanent. But Caleb had something Victor couldn't ignore. He had Serafina's attention. Worse, he had her sympathy. Victor had watched her face yesterday when Caleb left the office. Had seen the way she'd looked at the door after it closed. Like she was reconsidering something. Like she was about to make a mistake that would cost her everything. He couldn't allow that. The intercom on his desk buzzed. His assistant's voice came through. "Ms. Locke is here. Send her in." The door opened. Serafina walked in wearing a gray suit and an expression that told Victor this conversation wasn't going to be pleasant. She didn't sit. Just stood in front of his desk with her arms crossed. "You called CPS on him." Victor set his glass down. "I protected you. I didn't ask you to do that. You didn't have to." He leaned back in his chair. Calm. Reasonable. "Serafina, I've known you for 7 years. I know when you're about to make a decision that will hurt you. And this man, this driver, is exactly that kind of decision. You don't know anything about him. I know everything about him." Victor tapped the file. "He's broke. He's struggling. And now he's got leverage over you. Whether he realizes it yet or not." Serafina's jaw tightened. "He's not like that. Everyone's like that when they're desperate enough." Victor stood. Walked around the desk. Stopped 3 feet from her. "You're pregnant. With his child. That makes you vulnerable. It makes the company vulnerable. If word gets out. I'm handling it." "By doing what? Keeping it? Raising a child with a man who can barely feed the one he's got." Victor's voice stayed level. Cold. "You're not thinking clearly. And I understand, hormones, stress, whatever the doctors call it. But I need you to trust me. I've gotten you this far. I can get you through this. By destroying him. By protecting you." Victor moved closer. Dropped his voice. "That CPS visit tomorrow. It's insurance. If he's really the man you think he is, he'll pass. His son will be fine. And you'll know for certain what kind of father he is. But if he doesn't pass." Victor let the silence finish the sentence. Serafina's eyes went hard. "And if I tell you to stop? Then I'll stop." Victor smiled. Gentle. Patient. "But you won't. Because you're smarter than that. You didn't build this company by being sentimental. You built it by making hard choices. By cutting losses before they became disasters. He's not a loss. Not yet." Victor returned to his desk. Saturday. Picked up his scotch. "But he will be. Men like him always are." Serafina stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward the door. "Serafina." She stopped. Didn't turn around. "You're going to thank me for this," Victor said. "When it's over and your company is intact and your reputation is untouched, you're going to realize I did what you couldn't. What you wouldn't. Because that's what I do." She left without responding. Victor finished his scotch. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up the report from the private investigator he'd hired. Caleb Rowe wasn't just poor. He was vulnerable. 1 missed paycheck from homelessness. 1 emergency from disaster. The kind of vulnerable that made people dangerous when they got desperate. And desperate people made mistakes. Victor just had to wait for the right one. He scrolled through the investigator's notes. Caleb's work schedule. His son's school. The neighbor who watched the boy when Caleb worked late. The daycare that was owed money. The landlord who'd filed eviction paperwork. Everything was there. A map of pressure points. A blueprint for collapse. Victor made a phone call. "It's me," he said when someone answered. "I need you to make another call. To Patterson Shipping. Tell them you're from corporate HR doing a routine background check on Caleb Rowe. Ask about his attendance. His reliability. Make it sound official. What are we looking for? Anything that makes him look unreliable. Missed shifts. Late arrivals. Arguments with supervisors. I don't care if you have to stretch the truth. Just plant the seed. And if there's nothing, there's always something. Victor's voice was smooth as glass. Everyone has something. He ended the call. Leaned back in his chair. Looked out at the city below. Serafina thought she was protecting Caleb by standing up for him. By refusing to let Victor handle the situation cleanly. She didn't understand yet. The cruelest thing you could do to someone like Caleb Rowe wasn't to destroy him quickly. It was to let him hope. Let him think he had a chance. Let him believe things might work out. Let him fight and struggle and exhaust himself trying to hold on. And then, when he was too tired to fight anymore, take everything away. Victor had done it before. To competitors who'd underestimated him. To executives who tried to undermine Serafina. To threats that didn't even know they were threats until it was too late. He'd do it again. Because that's what Serafina paid him for. Even if she didn't know it yet. His phone buzzed. A text from the investigator. Patterson Shipping just cut Caleb's hours. Told him it was temporary. Budget concerns. Victor smiled. Temporary. Right. By the end of the week, Caleb would be scrambling. By the end of the month, he'd be desperate. And desperate men made deals. Victor opened a new document on his computer. Started drafting a contract. Simple language. Clear terms. Money in exchange for silence. For disappearing. For signing away any claim to Serafina or her child. Most men would take it. The smart ones always did. And if Caleb didn't? Well. Victor had other options. He always did. Outside his window, San Francisco glittered in the morning sun. Beautiful. Cold. Unforgiving. Just like the world Victor had built. Just like the world he intended to keep. The knock came at 8:30 in the morning. Caleb had been awake since 5. He'd scrubbed the apartment until his hands smelled like bleach and his back ached. Washed dishes that were already clean. Swept floors that didn't have dirt. Organized the bills on the table into neat stacks like that somehow made them less terrifying. Noah sat on the couch in his cleanest shirt, the one Caleb had ironed twice, watching cartoons with the volume low. The fever had broken overnight but the boy still looked pale. Tired. Like he'd been fighting something bigger than a cold. Caleb opened the door. 2 women stood in the hallway. One was older, maybe 50, with gray hair pulled back and eyes that had seen too many broken homes. The other was younger, mid-30s, holding a tablet and wearing an expression that said she'd already decided what kind of man Caleb was. Mr. Rowe. The older woman extended her hand. I'm Linda Chen. This is my colleague, Patricia Morris. We're from Child Protective Services. Caleb shook her hand. His palm was sweating. Come in. They stepped inside. Linda's eyes swept the apartment in 3 seconds flat. Took in the worn couch. The small kitchen. The bills on the table. The window that didn't quite close all the way. The heat that barely worked. Patricia was already typing notes on her tablet. Noah. Linda smiled at the boy. Hi, sweetheart. I'm Linda. Can I talk to you for a minute? Noah looked at Caleb. Fear in his eyes. The kind of fear that came from sensing when adults were deciding things that would change your life. It's okay, bud, Caleb said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. Just answer her questions. Tell the truth. Linda sat on the couch next to Noah. Patricia stayed standing. Watching. Writing. Noah, how old are you? Linda asked. 6. And you live here with your dad? Yeah. Do you like living here? Noah nodded. Can you tell me what you ate for breakfast today? Eggs. And toast. With the jelly Dad got from the store. Linda smiled. That sounds good. Does your dad make you breakfast every day? Aha. Sometimes cereal if he's gotta work early. Do you go to school? Yeah. Washington Elementary. Do you like school? Noah shrugged. It's okay. I got a friend named Marcus. We play at recess. Patricia's stylus kept moving across the tablet. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Like she was documenting every word. Every hesitation. Every detail that could be used as evidence. Linda kept her voice gentle. Noah, has your dad ever hurt you? Hit you or yelled at you in a way that scared you? Caleb's chest tightened. Noah's eyes went wide. No. Dad don't hit me. He gets sad sometimes but he don't yell. What do you mean he gets sad? Like, when the letters come. The ones in the white envelopes. He looks at them and his face gets sad. But then he makes dinner and does the voices for my bedtime story and he's not sad no more. Linda nodded. Made a note. Does your dad have friends who come over? Other grown-ups? Sometimes Mrs. Patterson. She watches me when Dad's working. She's nice. She gives me crackers. Anyone else? Noah thought about it. Shook his head. Linda stood. Thank you, Noah. You're a very smart boy. She turned to Caleb. Can I see his bedroom? Caleb led them down the short hallway. Opened the door to the room he'd given Noah, the only real bedroom in the apartment. Caleb slept on the mattress in the living room but he'd never tell CPS that. Never let them know he gave his son the only private space they had. Noah's room was small. A twin bed with a blanket Caleb had gotten from a thrift store. A bookshelf made from cinder blocks and plywood. Library books stacked neatly. Drawings taped to the wall, crayon pictures of superheroes and dinosaurs and one of Caleb and Noah holding hands under a sun. Linda looked at the drawings for a long time. Patricia checked the closet. Opened drawers. Looked under the bed like she expected to find something terrible hidden there. Where do you sleep, Mr. O? Patricia asked. Living room. On the couch. On a mattress. Patricia typed. Her face said everything. Can't even afford a bedroom. They moved to the kitchen. Linda opened the fridge. Saw the eggs. The milk. The cheese with the mold cut off. The ketchup packets. Do you receive any assistance? Linda asked. Food stamps. WIC? I did, Caleb said. Got cut off last month. They said I made too much. But I don't. The paperwork got messed up. I'm trying to get it fixed. And in the meantime, I make it work. Linda opened a cabinet. Saw the ramen. The canned soup. The peanut butter jar that was almost empty. Patricia kept typing. Mr. Rowe, can you tell me about Noah's mother? Linda's voice stayed neutral but Caleb heard the trap in the question that she's not in the picture. Where is she? I don't know. She left when Noah was a baby. Do you have custody paperwork? No. She just left. Never came back. Never asked for custody. So legally, you're not the sole guardian. Caleb's hands balled into fists. I'm his father. I've raised him alone for 6 years. I'm the only parent he's got. But without documentation. What documentation? You want me to prove his mom abandoned us? You want me to hire a lawyer? I can't afford to track down a woman who don't want to be found. Linda held up a hand. Mr. Rowe, I understand this is stressful. We're just trying to get a complete picture. The picture is I love my son. I work 2 jobs to feed him. I read to him every night. I show up. That's the picture. Patricia looked up from her tablet. Mr. Rowe, we received a report that Noah has been observed without proper supervision. That he's been left alone in this apartment. Caleb's stomach dropped. That's not true. The report says. I don't care what the report says. I never leave Noah alone. Mrs. Patterson watches him when I work. He's never unsupervised. Never. Can you prove that? Can I? Caleb's voice rose. He forced it back down. Mrs. Patterson is next door. You can ask her. Linda nodded. We will. They spent another 30 minutes going through everything. Checking the bathroom. Looking at Noah's clothes. Asking about school records and doctor visits and whether Caleb had ever been arrested. No. He hadn't. Had he ever used drugs? No. Did he drink? Not around Noah. Not ever. Did he have a stable job? Caleb hesitated. I work at Patterson Shipping. And I drive for a rideshare company. How many hours a week? Depends. 50. Sometimes 60. And childcare during those hours? Mrs. Patterson. And the daycare when I can afford it. Patricia's stylus moved faster. Finally, they finished. Linda sat down at the small table. Gestured for Caleb to sit across from her. Mr. Rowe, I'm going to be honest with you. This apartment is small. Your financial situation is clearly difficult. And the lack of documentation regarding Noah's mother raises concerns about legal custody. Caleb's throat closed up. However, Linda continued, Noah is clean. He's fed. He's clearly loved. He's attending school regularly. And he shows no signs of abuse or neglect. Caleb exhaled. But, Patricia cut in, we'll be monitoring the situation. You'll need to provide proof of stable income. Proof of childcare arrangements. And you'll need to work on getting legal custody established. How am I supposed to do that? Caleb's voice cracked. I can barely afford rent. There are legal aid services. That got waiting lists 6 months long. Patricia's expression didn't change. That's not our department, Mr. Rowe. Our job is to ensure Noah's safety. If you can't provide a stable environment. I am providing a stable environment. Look at him. He's happy. He's healthy. He's safe. Linda stood. For now, we're closing this case. But Mr. Rowe, understand, if we receive another complaint, this outcome may be different. I suggest you use this time to get your affairs in order. They left. Caleb closed the door behind them. Leaned against it. His legs shook. Noah appeared in the hallway. Dad? Are they gonna take me away? No. Caleb crossed the room. Pulled his son into his arms. No, buddy. Never. I promise. But even as he said it, Caleb knew the truth. Someone had done this. Someone had called CPS. Someone wanted him scared. Wanted him desperate. Wanted him to know they could take Noah away anytime they wanted. And that someone had the power to make it happen. Caleb's phone buzzed. A text from his supervisor at Patterson Shipping. Need to talk. Come by the office when you can. His stomach turned. He looked at Noah. At his son's face pressed against his chest. At the trust there. The faith that Dad would fix everything. Caleb didn't know how to fix this. Didn't know how to fight people with money and power and lawyers who smiled while they destroyed you. But he had to try. Because if he didn't, he'd lose the only thing in the world that mattered. Caleb stood outside the shipping yard office for 5 minutes before he found the courage to go inside. The building was a metal box with peeling paint and a door that stuck when you pulled it. Inside, the air smelled like diesel and coffee that had been sitting on the burner too long. His supervisor's office was at the back, a glass-walled room where Roger Tillman sat behind a desk covered in invoices and safety reports. Roger looked up when Caleb knocked. Gestured for him to come in. Caleb closed the door. Stayed standing. Sit down, Roger said. Caleb sat. The chair was hard plastic. Uncomfortable on purpose. Roger was 45 and looked 60. Years of early mornings and hard work had carved lines into his face that made him look permanent. Like he'd always been here and always would be. He'd hired Caleb 3 years ago when nobody else would. Given him a chance when Caleb's resume was nothing but gaps and explanations. Now Roger wouldn't meet his eyes. Got a call yesterday, Roger said. From corporate. Some kind of routine check on employee backgrounds. Caleb's stomach dropped. They asked about your attendance. Your work quality. Whether there'd been any issues. There haven't been. I know. Roger finally looked at him. I told them that. Told them you show up early. Work hard. Never complain. You're one of my most reliable guys. Then what's the problem? Roger sighed. Rubbed his face with both hands. Corporate says they're cutting hours across the board. Budget concerns. I gotta reduce everyone's schedule by 20%. Everyone. Everyone. But the way Roger said it made Caleb's chest tighten. Roger. Be straight with me. Roger was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened a folder on his desk. Pulled out a piece of paper. Slid it across to Caleb. It was a schedule. Next week's shifts. Caleb's name was on it. But his hours had been cut in half. Not 20%. 50. Corporate flagged your file, Roger said quietly. Said something about potential liability concerns. Didn't give me details. Just said to reduce your hours until further notice. Liability concerns. What does that even mean? I don't know. And they wouldn't tell me. Caleb stared at the schedule. At the numbers that didn't add up. At the hours that wouldn't pay rent. Wouldn't feed Noah. Wouldn't keep the lights on. This is because of CPS, Caleb said. Someone called them on me. Now someone's calling my job. This isn't random. Roger's face said he'd already figured that out. You in some kind of trouble? No. I'm being set up. By who? Caleb thought about Victor Holbrook. About the way that man had looked at him in the hallway. About the black car outside his apartment. About Serafina's face when she told him to leave her office. Someone with money, Caleb said. Someone who wants me gone. Roger leaned back in his chair. Look, Caleb. I don't know what you got yourself into. But I got 20 guys working here in corporate breathing down my neck. I can't protect you if they want you out. I'm not asking you to protect me. I'm asking you to be fair. Fair. Roger's voice went hard. You think any of this is fair? You think I wanted to cut your hours? You're one of my best workers. But I got bosses too. And when they say jump, I ask how high. Caleb stood. His legs felt weak but he stayed upright. So that's it. They make one call and I'm done. You're not done. You still got hours. Just, fewer of them. Half. You cut me in half. It's temporary. Don't. Caleb's voice came out sharper than he meant it to. Don't tell me it's temporary when we both know it's not. Don't treat me like I'm stupid. Roger didn't argue. Caleb walked to the door. Stopped with his hand on the handle. I got a son. 6 years old. This job is how I feed him. How I keep a roof over his head. And you're telling me some phone call from corporate is worth more than 3 years of me showing up and doing the work. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Roger didn't have an answer. Caleb left. He walked through the warehouse where he'd spent 3 years loading trucks and moving pallets and breaking his back for $12 an hour. Guys he worked with nodded at him. Asked if he was okay. He didn't answer. Just kept walking. Outside, the sun was too bright. The air was too warm. Everything felt wrong. His phone buzzed. Another text. This time from the rideshare company. Your account has been flagged for quality review. You've been temporarily suspended pending investigation. Please contact support for more information. Caleb stopped walking. Read the text again. Suspended. Both jobs. Same day. This wasn't coincidence. This was Victor. Caleb's hands shook. He wanted to throw the phone. Wanted to scream. Wanted to find Victor Holbrook and make him understand what it felt like to have everything taken away. But he didn't. Because that's what Victor wanted. Wanted Caleb to lose control. To do something stupid. To prove he was exactly the kind of man who didn't deserve Serafina or her child or anything good. Caleb got in his car. Drove home. His mind was blank. Empty. Like all the thoughts had been scraped out and replaced with static. When he got back to the apartment, Mrs. Patterson was sitting with Noah. The boy was coloring at the table. Drawing something with too many colors and no clear shape. How'd it go? Mrs. Patterson asked. Caleb forced a smile. Fine. Thanks for watching him. She looked at him like she knew he was lying but was too kind to say it. Anytime, baby. You know that. After she left, Caleb sat on the couch. Stared at the wall. Tried to figure out how he was going to pay rent with half his hours and no rideshare income. The math didn't work. It never worked. Noah climbed onto the couch next to him. Held up his drawing. Look, Dad. It's us. See? That's you and that's me and that's our house. The house in the picture was big. Had windows with curtains and a yard with flowers. Nothing like the apartment they lived in. It's perfect, Bud, Caleb said. Can we have a house like that someday? Caleb's throat closed up. Maybe. I don't need a big one. Just one where the heat works and you don't gotta sleep on the floor. Caleb pulled Noah close. I'm gonna fix this. I promise. But even as he said it, he didn't know how. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Caleb sat at the table and looked at the bills. Did the math over and over hoping it would change. It didn't. Rent was due in 8 days. He was short $400. With his hours cut and his rideshare account suspended, he had no way to make it up. He could ask his boss for an advance. But Roger had already made it clear whose side he was on. He could try to borrow money. But from who? He didn't have family. Didn't have friends with $400 to spare. Everyone he knew was just as broke as he was. He could sell something. But what? The car barely ran. The furniture was worthless. He didn't own anything worth selling. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Caleb almost didn't answer. But something made him pick up. Mr. Rowe. The voice was smooth. Professional. Familiar. This is Victor Holbrook. I believe we need to have a conversation. Caleb's blood went cold. How'd you get this number? I have access to a great many things, Mr. Rowe. Which is why I think you should hear what I have to say. I don't want anything from you. That's unfortunate. Because I have something you need. Victor paused. Money. Stability. A way out of the situation you're currently in. I'm not taking your money. Not mine. Ms. Locke's. She wants to help you. To ensure you and your son are taken care of. All you have to do is sign a very simple agreement. What kind of agreement? The kind that protects everyone involved. You receive financial support. A lump sum that would solve your immediate problems. In exchange, you agree to certain terms regarding your relationship with Ms. Locke and any future children. Caleb's hands tightened around the phone. You want me to sign away my kid? I want you to be realistic. You can't provide for the child you have. How do you expect to be involved with one you haven't even met yet? Victor's voice stayed calm. Reasonable. Like he was explaining basic math. This way, everyone wins. You get the help you need. Ms. Locke maintains her privacy. And both children grow up in environments suited to their needs. My son's environment is fine. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're about to lose your apartment. You've lost half your income. Child Services is watching you. And it's only going to get worse. Because of you. Because of your choices. Victor's tone hardened. I didn't make you poor, Mr. O. I didn't make you sleep with a woman so far above your station you can't even comprehend the damage you've caused. I'm simply managing the consequences of your actions. By destroying my life. By protecting hers. Victor paused. Think about your son, Mr. O. Really think about him. What's better for him? A father who can't make rent. Or a father who takes the help being offered and actually provides stability. Noah don't need money. He needs me. He needs both. And right now, you can't give him either. Victor's voice softened. Became almost kind. I'm not your enemy. I'm offering you a solution. Take the money. Sign the agreement. Move somewhere cheaper. Get your life together. Be the father Noah deserves. All you have to do is walk away from a situation that was never going to work anyway. Caleb closed his eyes. Saw Noah's face. Saw the drawings on the wall. Saw the trust in his son's eyes. I'm not signing anything, he said. Then you'll lose everything. Victor's voice went cold. Your apartment. Your jobs. And eventually, your son. Because the next time CPS visits, I'll make sure they find exactly what they're looking for. The line went dead. Caleb sat there in the dark. His hands were shaking. His chest hurt. And for the first time in 6 years, since the night Kendra left and Caleb had held a 6-month-old baby and promised to never let him down, he didn't know if he was strong enough to keep fighting. Serafina walked into the boardroom at 7:58 in the morning and every conversation stopped. 14 board members sat around a mahogany table that cost more than most people made in a year. Investors in suits that whispered money. Executives who'd built careers on knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. And at the head of the table, Victor Holbrook, looking calm and confident like he'd already won. Serafina took her seat. Set her phone face down on the table. Folded her hands. Good morning, she said. Victor smiled. Good morning, Serafina. Thank you for making time for this emergency session. You called it. Not me. Yes. Because we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Victor opened a folder. Slid a document across the table. This is a proposed restructuring plan. It addresses certain vulnerabilities in our current leadership structure and establishes protocols for situations that might compromise the company's stability. Serafina didn't touch the document. What vulnerabilities? The kind that come from personal decisions affecting professional responsibilities. Victor's voice stayed smooth. Controlled. Serafina, you've built an incredible company. But recent events suggest you may be facing distractions that could impact your ability to lead effectively. Recent events. Your pregnancy. The room went silent. Serafina felt 14 pairs of eyes turn toward her. Saw the calculations happening behind those eyes. The stock price implications. The media coverage. The risk assessments. How did you know? Her voice came out steady. Cold. It's my job to know. Victor leaned back. And it's my job to protect this company. Which is why I'm proposing a temporary leave of absence while you handle your personal affairs. 6 months. Full salary. Complete discretion. And when you return, everything will be exactly as you left it. Except I won't be CEO. You'll retain the title. But day-to-day operations would transfer to an interim leadership team. For the company's stability. Serafina looked around the table. Saw some board members nodding. Saw others avoiding her eyes. Saw the sharks smelling blood in the water. And if I refuse? Victor's expression didn't change. Then I'll be forced to share certain information with the board. Information about the father of your child. His background. His financial situation. His current legal troubles with Child Protective Services. He paused. The optics alone would be devastating. You're blackmailing me. I'm protecting 3,000 employees who depend on this company. I'm protecting shareholders who've invested billions. I'm protecting everything you've built from a scandal that would destroy it. Victor's voice went soft. Almost gentle. Serafina, I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to save you from yourself. Serafina stood. The movement was sudden enough that several board members flinched. She walked to the window. Looked out at the city below. At the streets where real people lived real lives. Where men like Caleb worked 2 jobs just to survive. Where children went to school in shoes held together with tape. She thought about the night in the rain. About the conversation that had felt more honest than anything in her world of billion-dollar deals and carefully crafted images. She thought about Caleb's face when she told him she was pregnant. The fear there. Not for himself. For his son. She thought about Victor's voice on the phone last night when she'd called him. The way he'd admitted, without shame, that he'd orchestrated everything. The CPS visit. The job cuts. The rideshare suspension. All of it designed to make Caleb desperate enough to take the money and disappear. I did what you couldn't, Victor had said. I made the hard choice. Serafina turned around. You're right about one thing, Victor, she said. I have been distracted. I've been so focused on protecting this company that I forgot why I built it in the first place. Serafina. I built it because I was tired of people like you telling people like me what we couldn't do. Her voice cut through the room like glass. I built it because I wanted to prove that a woman in her 20s with nothing but code and ambition could create something that mattered. And somewhere along the way, I started believing that protecting what I built meant becoming exactly like the people who said I'd fail. Victor stood. You're emotional. Understandable given your condition. But this isn't the time for speeches. No. It's the time for decisions. Serafina walked back to the table. Picked up the document Victor had prepared. Read it. Then set it down. I'm not taking a leave of absence. Then you're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. She looked at each board member. Met their eyes. Let them see she wasn't backing down. I'm pregnant. The father is a man named Caleb Rowe. He's a shipping yard worker and rideshare driver from Oakland. He has a 6-year-old son. He's broke. And I'm going to make sure he and his children are taken care of, not with hush money and legal contracts, but with actual support. Like a human being. You'll destroy this company, Victor said. Then I'll destroy it being honest instead of being afraid. Serafina turned to him. You're fired, Victor. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The room exploded. Board members shouted. Demanded explanations. Threatened resignations. Victor just smiled. You think you can fire me? I have contracts. Protections. You'll be tied up in court for years. Maybe. But you won't be here. Serafina pressed a button on the conference room phone. Security to the executive boardroom. Now. Victor's smile faded. You'll regret this. I already regret waiting this long. 2 security guards entered. Young men in crisp uniforms who looked uncomfortable being in a boardroom full of billionaires. Gentlemen, Serafina said. Please escort Mr. Holbrook from the building. He's no longer employed here. Victor didn't move. This isn't over. Yes, Serafina said quietly. It is. The guards moved toward him. After a long moment, Victor stood. Buttoned his jacket. Picked up his phone. As he walked toward the door, he stopped next to Serafina. Leaned close enough that only she could hear. You just bet everything on a man who can't even pay his rent, he whispered. I hope he's worth it. Then he was gone. The boardroom erupted again. Questions. Demands. Threats. Serafina let them talk. Let them rage. Let them threaten to sell their shares and pull their investments and go to the media. When they finally ran out of words, she spoke. I understand your concerns. And I understand some of you will walk away because of this. But I'm not apologizing for being human. I'm not apologizing for making a choice that doesn't fit into a quarterly earnings report. And I'm not apologizing for refusing to destroy a man's life because it's convenient. The stock will crash, someone said. Then it crashes. We'll rebuild. The media will crucify you. Let them. You're risking everything you've worked for. No. Serafina picked up her phone. I'm choosing what actually matters. She left the boardroom. Behind her, chaos continued. Board members arguing. Phones ringing. The sound of an empire shaking. Serafina walked to her office. Closed the door. Locked it. Then she sat at her desk and made a phone call. Caleb answered on the 3rd ring. Hello. It's Serafina. Silence. I need to tell you something, she said. Victor's been fired. He can't hurt you anymore. The CPS complaint, your jobs, all of it was him. I'm fixing it. I'm making calls. Getting your hours restored. Clearing your rideshare account. Whatever you need. More silence. Caleb. Why? His voice sounded broken. Exhausted. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. You could lose everything. Maybe. But I already lost something more important. She paused. I lost myself. Somewhere between building this company and protecting it, I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who let a man like Victor speak for me. Act for me. Hurt people in my name. I don't want your pity. It's not pity. It's accountability. Serafina closed her eyes. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to be part of this pregnancy or this child's life if you don't want to be. I'm just asking you to let me do what I should have done from the beginning. Help. Actually help. Not with contracts or conditions. Just, help. Caleb was quiet for so long she thought he'd hung up. Then, my son's name is Noah. He's 6. He likes dinosaurs and superhero movies and he still believes I can fix anything. He sounds wonderful. He is. And he don't deserve a father who's too tired to read him bedtime stories because he's working 3 jobs. He don't deserve to worry about whether we got food or heat or a place to sleep. No child does. So yeah. If you're offering help, real help, I'll take it. For him. Not for me. Okay. Another pause. This baby, Caleb said. When it comes. I don't know how to be part of your world. Don't know if I should be. I don't know either, Serafina admitted. But maybe we figure it out together. No lawyers. No contracts. Just 2 people trying to do right by the children depending on us. That sounds too simple. Maybe it's supposed to be. 3 months later, Serafina stood outside a courthouse in Oakland holding a folder of documents that had taken 8 lawyers 2 months to prepare. Custody paperwork for Caleb. Legal documentation establishing him as Noah's sole guardian. Protection orders against anyone who tried to use his son as leverage. She'd paid for all of it. Quietly. Without conditions. The stock had dropped 12% after she'd fired Victor. 2 board members had resigned. The media had run stories for weeks, some sympathetic, most brutal. But lock dynamics survived. And Serafina learned something her mother had never taught her. Strength wasn't about being untouchable. It was about choosing what you stood for when everything was on the line. The courthouse doors opened. Caleb walked out holding Noah's hand. The boy had grown taller. Was wearing new shoes. Looked healthy and happy and completely unaware of the war that had been fought to protect him. Caleb saw Serafina. Stopped. She walked over. Handed him the folder. What's this? He asked. Peace of mind. He opened it. Scanned the documents. His eyes went wide. Serafina, I can't. You can. And you will. For him. She looked at Noah. Smiled. Hi, Noah. I'm Serafina. Noah looked up at his dad. Got a nod. Then looked back at her. You're the lady who helped my dad. I tried to. He said you're gonna have a baby. I am. Is it a boy or a girl? A girl. Noah's face lit up. That's cool. Girls are nice. There's a girl in my class named Destiny and she shares her crayons. Serafina laughed. It felt good. Real. Caleb put a hand on Noah's shoulder. Go wait by the car, bud. I'll be right there. Noah ran off. Caleb looked at Serafina. Thank you. For this. For everything. I don't know how to pay you back. You don't have to. That don't sit right with me. Then be a good father. That's payment enough. Caleb nodded. Started to walk away. Then stopped. Turned back. This baby. Your daughter. If you need anything, help, support, someone to just be there, I will be. Maybe not the way you're used to. Maybe not perfect. But I'll show up. I know you will. He left. Serafina stood there watching him drive away. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mother. I saw the news. Call me when you're ready to fix this disaster. Serafina deleted it. Then she opened her car door and drove back to the city. Back to the company that was rebuilding. Back to the life that looked nothing like she'd planned. But for the first time in years, Serafina felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. Across town, Victor Holbrook sat in a coffee shop watching the news coverage of Serafina's press conference. She'd gone public. Announced her pregnancy. Named Caleb as the father. Talked about systemic poverty and corporate responsibility and the importance of choosing humanity over image. The interview had gone viral. Stock analysts were calling it a disaster. Victor called it an opportunity. He pulled out his phone. Made a call. "It's me," he said. "I need you to start digging. Everything you can find on Caleb Rowe. His past. His mother. His ex. Anything we missed. I thought you were done with this." Victor smiled. "I'm never done. I'm just getting started." He ended the call. Looked out the window at the city. Some battles didn't end when you lost a fight. They ended when you decided how far you were willing to go to win the war. And Victor Holbrook had never learned how to lose. What would you sacrifice to protect someone you love? Tell me in the comments. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications, because some stories don't end, they just begin again. Share this with someone who needs to know that choosing the hard right over the easy wrong is always worth it. And remember, your voice in the comments might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for being here. For listening. For caring. These stories matter because you make them matter. Let's keep changing the world one story at a time.